CFR 49, Federal Railroad Administration, Department of Transportation, Chapter 2, Part 262. Assistance to states for local rail services under Section 5 of the Department of Transportation Act, 266.1, definitions 266.3, Rail Service Assistance Program 265, or 2665, state eligibility 266.7, project eligibility 266.9, federal state share 266.11, allowable cost 266.13, distribution funds 266.15, requirements of state rail plan 266.17, application 266.19, environmental impact 266.21, grant agreement disbursement 266.23, record audit examination 266.25, waiver modifications. Authority Section 5, Department of Transportation Act, Title 49, U.S. Standard Code 1654, as amended by the Local Rail Services Assistance Act of 1978, Public Law 95-607, 92 Statute 3059, sources 44 Federal Register 51129, August 30th, 1979, unless otherwise noted. Alright, 266.1, definitions as used in its part of the acquisition system means the funds granted by the state under the Section 5F2 or the Department of Transportation Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 5F2 to cover the cost occurring with the purchase, the lease, or in such a manner that the state considers appropriate line of railroad or other rail projects interesting therein existing and future rail with the future freight service act of the Department of Transportation Act with administrative means for the administrative of the Federal Road Administration with administrative delegate. Cash means the outlay funds. Commission means for the interstate with the commerce commission and any such successor federal agency relevant activity. The common carrier means for the person with providing the railway transportation compensation subject with the jurisdiction of the commission under the subchapter 1 subchapter I of the chapter 105 Title 49 U.S. Standard Code designation state agency means for the state agency designated under the section F5J2 of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 J2, entitlement means for the amount of citizens that say eligible for the receive annually under Section 5H of the Act, Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 H. Equipment, it means a rolling stock of the kind generally with American Railroad, the revenue of freight service facility to mean the track ties, roadbed related structure, including terminal train tracks, appurtenances, bridges, the tunnel of the structures used in usable rail service operations. FRA means Federal Railroad Administration. Fares, federal share means the contribution administrator under the section FG of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 G through the State Railway Services Assistance Program. Final system plan of the means of the plan approved with the Congress under Section 208 Regional Rail Reorganization Act of 1973, gross Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 718, gross ton miles per mile, gross ton miles per mile means the combined weight of the locomotive of the trailing car of the contents using the revenue freight trains multiplied by the number of the route miles traveled divided by the number of the route miles over the line. Line means the line of the railroad. Maintenance means the inspection, light repairs, emergency repairs, and planned program periodic maintenance which is necessary to keep a line existing with the condition complying with the FRA class safety standard. The planning assistance means for the funds granted with the state under the Section 5I of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654I of the meet with the cost of the establishing, including developing, planning, and implementation, revising, updating with the state rail plan required with the Section 5J of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654J, planning work program meaning for the portion of the state planning, the application with which outlines the state plan, establishing, implementation, revising, updating the state rail plan with the meets for the requirements of Section 5.1 of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654I of the program operation assistance meaning for the funded grant as the state covered with those administrative costs allowable under the Federal Management Circular 74-4. Rail Act means the Regional Rail Reorganization Act of 1973, Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 701 and 10 sequence. Rail banking means the acquisition of the interest of the railway right of way of sufficient to ensure the preservation of the future railway freight service. Alright, rail facility construction system meaning for the fund granted with the state under the Section F5 of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 F5 to cover the cost of the construction of the railway related facilities, including new connections between the two or more existing lines, intermodal terminal, freight terminals, slidings of the relocation of existing lines for the purpose of improving the quality and efficiency of rail freight services. Rail service continuation assistance means for the fund granted with the state under the Section 5F F1 of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 with F1 to cover the rail service continuation payment of the difference between the revenue attributed to the line of the railroad is avoidable cost of providing the rail service with the line together. The reasonable return of the value of the line of the railroad property retained to the line is determined by the corners of the Title 49 CFR Part 1121 with the following exemptions, whereas service is eligible for the subsidized under the Section 402C2 A and B of the Railway Act. The rail service continuation assistance must means of the funds for the payment is determined in accordance with the Title 49 CFR Part 1125. Where service is eligible to subsidize under Section 402C2C of the Railway Act, the rail service continuation assistance means of the fund, but the payments calculated to the greatest extent possible in manner consistent with the Title 49 CFR Part 1121. Rehabilitation improvement assistance means of the funds granted by the state under the Section 5F3 of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Code 1654 for F3 with the cover the cost of the replacing, upgrading with the extent of the necessary to permit the adequate efficiency rail freight service facilities needed to provide the service of the online. Relocation means the actual expense but directly incurred with the moving of the shipping from the line with the new location. State means the state of the District of Columbia in which the common carrier maintains the line. Any line state rail plan means that the current line, including the updates, revision amendments required in the Section 5J1 of the Act of the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 J1 substitute services assistance mean the fully funded the grant with the state under the Section F5 F4 of the Act of the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 F4 to cover the cost of the reducing cost of the lost services rail service demands less expenses and with the continuing rail service including but not limited to the acquisition, construction, improvement of the facility provision with the substitute freight transportation services relocation costs. Alright, 266.30, Rail Service Assistance Program. Scope of the program. The Rail Service Assistance Program includes the Rail Service Continuation Assistance for Acquisition Assistance, Rehabilitation, Improvement Assistance, Substitute Service Assistance, Railway Facility Construction Assistance, Planning Assistance, the Planning Program and Operations Assistance. B, the Special Limitation for the Planning Assistance Program Operation Assistance. When a state eligible to receive the $100,000 of the 5% of the entitled rich with the greater of the planning assistance. 2, the state eligible to receive up to 5% of the total amount of the funds granted each of the fiscal year under the paragraphs A1 through 5 of this section of this program Operation Assistance. 266.5, state eligibility. General eligibility requirements under the Rail Service Assistance Program. The state eligible to assistance for the state has certified the pursuant to the F5J4 of the Act as well as adopt the maintain adequate procedure for the Financial Control Act counting with the performance evaluation in order to ensure the proper use of the federal funds for the purpose of establishing the state rail plan. The state is submitted with the accordance with the statute 266.17E with the part planning application for any other assistance the state is established for the adequate plan with the rail service which, for the means of the requirements of statute 266.15 with this part, be the part of an overall planning process, transportation services in the state. And the C, includes the and procedure for the updating, the revising, amending such that the plan D, updated, the revised, amended, has approved the administrator. 2, the state such state rail plan. A, the administrator is coordinated with the designated state agency, provide for the equitable distribution of resources. Includes a methodology determination ratio, benefit the cost of the project acquisition assistance, rehabilitation, improvement assistance, substitute service assistance, and rail facility construction assistance is solid. 3, the state agency that has the authority to administrate the jurisdiction, develop, promote, supervise, support, safety, adequate, efficient rail transportation services. The employer will employ directly and indirectly sufficient trained, qualified personnel. Will maintain adequate program and investigation, research, promotion, development, which provision with the public participation and D, is designated directly solely by the corporation or other state for the agency to take with all the practical steps to improve the transportation safety, but to reduce the transportation related the energy utilization pollution. With the state undertake to immediately notify the administrator of any change of the condition which might affect its compliance with this section. Alright, 266.7, Project Eligibility, Rail Service Continuation Assistance, Acquisition Assistance with the Substitute Service Assistance, Project Eligible Assistance under the Statute 266.3A1, 2, and 4 of this part, respectively. The Commission pursuant to Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 10903 the found of February 5, 1976 for the public conveniency necessary to permit the abandonment of discontinue the rail service of the line related to the project except for any subject related to the project eligibility prior to the October 1st, 1978 eligible until September 30th, 1981. Any such line eligible for the rail service continuation assistance shall receive such assistance for no more than 36 months after October 1st, 1978. 2, the line-related project was eligible to assistance under Section 402 of the Railway Act, Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 762, but except for such line was related to project is eligible only until September 30th, 1981. For the purpose of the acquisition assistance, the line-related project has been possible in conclusion for the Railway Bank with the Part 33 of the Section for the C of the final statement of the system plan. Rehabilitation Improvement Assistance Railway Facility Construction Assistance. The project is eligible for the assistance under statute 266-3A and 5, part respectively, if the commissions have not been made with the finding of the public convenience to the necessity will require the permanent abandonment of the discontinuity of the rail service of the line related with the project. Pending with the application for the certificate of the abandonment of the discontinued rail service of the line project is withdrawn with a reasonable period as determined the administrator following the execution of the grant agreement. And before the federal funds are disbursed for the project of 3, the line will be related to the project certified with the railroad having the carried 3 million gross tons of miles per mile less than the prior during the prior year. B. Line related project certified with the railroad written with the statement identified with the name of the line with the state and with the state or states which will be located with the length of the terminal mile with the pole 10.5 carried with between 3 or 5 million gross tons per mile per year during the prior year. The administrator has determined the project consistent with the proposal made under the authority of the subsection FA and A through E of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654 A and E. 2I. Application for the certificate of abandonment discontinuous rail service line related to the project have been filled with the commission for during the period of February 5th, 1976 through December 31st, 1978, whether or not such an application has been granted during the period of February 5th of 1976 through the December 31st, 1978, the commission was found with the public convenience for the necessity with the requirement of the permanent abandonment of discontinuous the rail service with the line related project respectively with the application was filed with the line related with the project line listed possible inclusion for the related rail bank part 3 with the section 3 final system planning. Alright, the line related with the project was eligible to require for the section Title 402 C3 with the Rail Act Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 762 with C3 with the project eligibility under the paragraphs B2, B3, B4 with the section are eligible only until the September 30th, 1981 project's initial eligibility under paragraph B2 with the section may subsequently become eligible under paragraph B1 of the section if the commission is now issued the new certificate of the public convenience and necessity of the respective line related to the project. Alright, 266.9, Federal, State, and Share. Federal share, with the federal share allowable cost for the rail service assistance program, and 80% of the expectation of the federal share payment for the covered but the rail service continuation assistance for the shown, 70% of the third 12-month period, which began with after the October 1st, 1980, so the assistance provided. B, the state share general. The state share allowable the cost for the use of the railway service assistance program shall provide either the in cash through the eligible in-kind benefits that would not be otherwise have been provided with more than the required state share is provided during the federal official year beginning in October of 1978. Thereafter, the amount excessive of the required the state share may be carried forward to the subsequent official year for the state share allowable to cost under the railway assistance service assistance program may be satisfied directly and indirectly by any federal funds unless the funds were provided with the federal program which specified the authorized use of the such funds satisfied with the non-federal share of the federal subsidized programs. C, in-kind benefits of the eligible type of the benefit and their valuation. The following type of in-kind benefits eligible which they are provided with the project eligible under statute 266.7 above the part whether or not the federal assistance is requested for the project of the activities which would be eligible for the planning of the program operation. Assistance eligible in kind with the benefits are valued as follows. The value of foregiven taxes, such as the portion of the gross received, the revenue taxes which are applicable to approve the project with the project property tax, the project-related property shall be the amount that would be otherwise have been levied with the taxing authority, with the foregiven. This may be through the expectation of the remission value with the trackage right that is secured by the common carrier, that shall be amount paid by the railroads comparable to rights for the comparable to rail freight property. The value of the state salaries for the state public employees working with the state rail service assistance program shall consist of the rates paid for the similar work with the state public employees working in the comparable state programs, but shall not include the overhead of the general administrative costs. The value of the donation for the state with the third party for the behalf of the state real property, tangible personal property, in-kind necessary for safe efficiency operation for the rail freight service state and locally owned with the leased buildings using rail freight operation equipment, and for the materials shall be determined as follows. The value of the state tangible personal property shall be established in state actual cost in accordance with the Federal Management Circular 74-4. The value denominated tangible property shall be determined in accordance with the attachment F of the Office of Management Budget Circular A102. The value of the state real property that shall be estimated by the state actual cost in accordance with the Federal Management Circular 74-4 with the lease of the independent appraisal based on the result of the title search performed with the property of the which first they otherwise shall be valued in the fair market value established with at least one independent appraisal for the result of the title search at the time of the state proposed to make the property available as kind benefit. The value donated to the real property shall be its fair market value at the time time of the donation, as they establish at least one independent appraisal based on the result of the title of search eligibility criteria to be apply for the forward of state share with in-kind benefits to be variable with the state record to be necessary for a reasonable, proper, efficient accomplishment of the objective of the Rail Service Assistance Program be provided for, approved the grant budget, be approved for the under paragraph 3 of the paragraph C. The state shall submit the information for the administrator being requested to verify the value of the in-kind benefits. Through the request for approval of in-kind benefits that are to be allowed, but shall include the following: the full name of the principal business, the address for the contributor, other than grantor, detailed documentation and the kind of the benefits that include the identification kind of the in-kind benefits for the provided, as well as their estimated value of the kind of benefits that are to be provided with the third-party copy of the executed agreement between the state and third-party. The certification of the state and the contribution will be used solely for the purpose of documentation. Statute 26611, allowable costs. Allowable costs include the following costs for the properly allowable the good work, performance, planning of the program, operation costs which are allowable for the Federal Management Circular 74-4, with the cost of the project for the eligible or under Statute 266-7. The part of the all allowable costs shall be authorized by the fully executed grant agreement, with the state may incur the costs of the prior to the execution of the grant agreement only if the administrator based on the state demonstrate for the compelling need for the incurred cost of the prior to the execution of the grant agreement that has authorized the cost in writing prior to the incurrence by the state. 26613, distribution of funds. Formula: the funds appropriated with reallocated with the fiscal year within the section referred to the jointly as funds that are to be distributed to each of the state as follows: 1/2 of the funds are allocated with the ratio of the state rail with the mileage in accordance with the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 10904D, with any other potential the subject of abandonment to become the subject of the application certificate and abandonment of discontinuance with the carrier plans to submit that has not been yet submitted bears the total such rail mileage in all states. 1/3 of the fund for the allocated rail which the state rail's mileage of which Commission has found to be 3 years prior to the first day of the fiscal year for which the funds for the allocated with the public convenience necessity permanent for the abandonment of the discontinuous rail service of such rail with the mileage bear the total such of the rail's mileage within all states all until September 30th, 1981. Such rail mileage include the rail mileage eligible under the Rail Service Assistance Program pursuant to Section 402 of the Rail Act. With all the rail mileage prior to the October 1st, 1978 has been included with the formula allocation purpose. The administrator will calculate the rail mileage under the paragraph of the October 1st each of the year. The above calculations will be adjusted if necessary. No state will receive less than 1% of the funds appropriated for the fiscal year. Relocation of the administrative relocation amount of the state funds which have not been granted under the executed grant agreement that ended for the fiscal year for which the funds are appropriated. The funds determined with the federal audit except for the allowable costs which have not been granted under the executed grant agreement may be ended for the fiscal year in which the federal audit is made with the reallocated the funds are distributed in accordance with the allocation formula described in paragraph A of section of this section. C. Interstate sharing allocated funds where no violation state in the law of the two or more which are eligible to receive the assistance program under the Rail Service Assistance Program. The Title 266.5 is required with the community on any portion of the entitlement purpose of conducting an eligible project with a mutual benefit provided that they enter into the agreement for the purpose. 266.15 requirements of the state rail plan. The state planning process of the state rail plan shall be based on the comprehensive the coordinated with the continuing planning process of the transportation service of the state and shall be developed with an opportunity for the participation by the person interested in the rail activity of the state and adjacent to the states with the property at minimum. For the state shall hold a public hearing with the basis of the reasonable public notice of the hearing of the press. There should be sufficient public interest for the just hearing justify the hearing. The public notice shall be given in accordance with the applicable state law of the practice concerning compatible material for the draft of the state rail plan and available to public inspection reasonable time. Advance hearing of the state shall enable the local regional governmental body to review with the comment with the appropriate elements of the state rail provisions. Shall be made with the updating and revising and amending the state rail plan. Format of the state rail plan each submitted with the response with the requirement of the section shall be refined for the requirement of the subsection, paragraph, and subparagraph. B. C. The contents of the state rail plan. Each state rail plan shall have the specific object for the state rail service assistance program to explain how the implementation of the state rail plan with the commas for the object to explain the event of the data, source of the assumption, analytical methods, other legal constraints of the special program, problems, and conditions, but it will be aided with the public in understanding the state rail plan. 2. Contain an illustration of the state entire rail system on suitable scale map of the state highway system, such as reduction of the county with the highway rail planning subdivision a series of the map designated with respect to each of the line listed in paragraph paragraph 3 of the subsection, including all the lines and connections to them. The operating carrier, the freight traffic density, the location of the passenger service. These maps accompanied with the written description of the service provided with each of the line, identifying the following class for the rail services and state lines of the states which are eligible to assistance under statute 266.7 of this part, other than that was listed in paragraph C3 3 of 2 of the section lines the state with a common carrier identified with the system diagram map submitted under Title 49 CFR 112120B1 and 2 with its potential subject to abandonment line with the anticipated subject of abandonment, the discontinuance of applying for the 3 years following the date of submission, and the 3 of reserved lines for the state with which the abandonment discontinuance of application pending. 5 lines for the state which involve the following condition for the proposal that have been submitted with the commission approval that are in the process of the negotiation extent for the information publicly available. A. Mergers. B. Consolidation. C. Reorganization. D. Purchase with other common carriers. E. The other unification coordination of the projects. 6. Relocation of the project for the state plan with the request of federal assistance approval of in-kind benefits. 7. Real projects of ways to the state procedure for planning to provide assistance for the source for the other rail service assistance program, including estimated costs of the project. 4. Establish, describe, and screen with the criteria used for selecting the eligible line with the state analysis for the detail with identify these lines, explaining how the application screen with the criteria resulted in their selection, decreasing, describe the state methodology to determine the ratio benefit of the cost of the project, proposed project eligibility under statute 266.7 of the Department exempt for the project that are found with the rail service continuation assistance. 6. Include the extent of the information available to the state with the following data for each of the line with the state has been analyzed in detail. 1. Annual freight tonnage for the carrier aggregate day with the commodity type of the indicating the seasonal function, traffic fluctuation, number of the shippers, receipt of the line aggregated type of the grain, the elevator, power plant, heavier manufacturing, including identification of the information shipping weighting for the administrator to consider the confidential extent and period of by law. 2. The revenue for the cost of the providing the rail service on the line. 3. The condition for the rail-related rail facilities equipment for the line eligible for statute 266.7b with the part of the description particular for rail facility involved with any part of the project state shall be made in considering of the line. 4. When the state is considering line rail service for the continuation assistance of the project with the freight traffic with the need for the line least the 3 succeeding calendar year for the estimates of amount of the type of equipment, the condition of the rail facilities level of the service necessary to satisfy the project traffic needs with all the permit well as estimated the revenue cost for providing services. When the state is considered with the project eligibility under the 266.7 of the Department of the amount with the funding expanded with the maintenance of the line with the kind of the work property performed the 5-year period during the eligibility of the 6. When the state is considered with the line with the rail banking, the description of the line features economic potential such as the existence fossil fuel with the reserve of the agricultural production likely to be served. 7. Describe alternative to the state with an analysis applying with the methodology described in the paragraph C5 with the section of the rail service as a continuation payment, the rehabilitation, improvement of the acquisition rail facility, construction potential for the movement of the freight and the alternative mode for the abandonment of the discontinuous rail freight services. 8. Apply the methodology described in paragraph C5 with the section each line with the state that is selected and analyze the details. Specify the state decision regarding the alternative selected for each line with the state has analyzed the detail including the following. 1. Indication for whether the federal assistance requested for the other funds will be issued for the implement the alternative selected, and 2. The identification of the lines may be effective with the alternative selected. 3. Explanations on how alternative is selected for the contribution for the accomplishment of the state objective of the state in the paragraph C1 of the section. 4. The statement of the projected feature of the line after the alternative is selected for the implemented line no longer to be eligible for the rail service continuation assistance under the statute 266.7a of this part A after the payback period of the state benefit cost analysis whenever the appropriate time to describe the planning process, participation of local regional government bodies, the railroads, railroad labor, the rail service users, and public general. 2. Details overall planning of the process of the transportation services in the state indicate how the overall planning process state addressed the need to improve the national energy efficiency to reduce the national use of the petroleum and natural gas, increase the national use of coal. Include a program project that identifies the project with which the state expects the submit application for the anticipated submission for the program shall group of the proposed projects in order to comply with the state criteria of the rules and assistance shall identify the type of the project of the rail service contribution continuation system payment is acquisition rehabilitation improvement of the rail facility construction submission services and location duration. 2. Include the anticipated amount of the funds requested each for the project. D. Update the revisions amended for the state rail plan generally as proposed with the paragraph of the section of the state rail plan shall be updated with at least one on an annual basis, but may be revised frequently after the retreat from the state according to the program needs of such updates that shall be subject to the same review of the public participation and approval of the procedure for the state FRA has the original state rail plan contents. Annual updates shall be included the following. 1. A response on the answer to the FRA comments previously submitted with an update of the revision amendment to the original state rail plan and updated the information previously submitted with no longer accurate with the result of the plan implementation action of the general entity of the railroad change for the condition for a line receiving the service of the continuation assistance with the inclusion of the review of the cost information for the past year for the operating expenses, reevaluation of service based on these new data. 4. Updated them as for the description required in the paragraph C2 of the section and 5 the analysis of the new project was developed in the state in accordance with the paragraph C4, 5, and 6 for this section. And 6. The change of the agency responsibility authority, including the ability to provide non-federal share. 7. The revision of the state policy objective to the long-range expectations. E. The adoption and submission for the state rail plan and annual update for the original 5 copy of the state rail plan with the many amendments revision update for the submitted by the FRA for the review with approval of the certification for the governor of delegates for the submission of the Constitution state rail plan established by the state to provide with the subsection 5J of the Act of the state rail plan all the amendments revision update for the submitted by the FRA with the operating with the Federal Highway Division and the current list for the mailing address above the office of the provided to the FRA to each state. After the review of the state rail plan, update for the state rail plan, and all the amendment, the revision, update for the analyze the accordance for the section of all projects for which the state anticipated request for the rail service assistance with other pending assistance during fiscal year, but in accordance with the statute 266-17B with the spark of the project with which boards funds requested must have been addressed with the previously approved the state rail plan update with the administrative determined the state rail plan updates. Non-accordance with the part of the administrator will not notify the state writing and setting for the administrator of the region for such determination. 266-17 application. General application planning assistance shall comply with the paragraphs B, C, and E with the section application rail service with the continuation assistance shall comply with the paragraphs B, C, and D and F of the section employment for the acquisition of the assistance shall comply with the paragraphs B, C, D, and G of the section of applications rehabilitation improvement of the system of the rail facility construction assistance shall comply with the paragraphs B, C, D, and H of the section of application substitute for the service of the application shall comply with the paragraphs B, C, D, and I of the section. Submission application shall be submitted with the designated state agency forms contained with the attachment M with the Office of Management, circle the A102. Each of the submitted with the response to the requirement of the search section shall be the reference of the requirement of the subsection, paragraph, subparagraph. Each of the application shall be consistent with the current state rail plan analyzed in it. 2. The state may apply with the planning of the assistance cover the prospective cost of any time during the planning process. 3. The exhibit the previously filed with the administrative needs not to be refiled unless the prior filing with it is rendered obsolete with the change in circumstances. Such prior filing should be appropriately referenced and source location of the data submittal with the contents. Each application shall include the full name, the principal business for the address of the applicant, name of the title, address, phone, and number of the person who corresponds with regarding with the application should be addressed. 3. Budget estimate of the total amount of assistance required with the project plan with the application proposed for the future and furnishing of the share of the total cost of the project as well as the copy executed with the grants of between the agency and any third party which may provide the non-federal share of the portion thereof. Since the Chief Executive Officer application with the federal funds provided by the Act will be used solely for the purpose of the assistance shall provide with the conformity with limitation of expenditures under the Act of the applicable to regulations. 6. The evidence for the application established in accordance with the attachment G with the Office of Management Budget Circular A102 with the adequate procedure for the financial control, accounting performance evaluation in order to assure the proper use of the federal funds. 7. The assurance of the application the Chief Executive Officer the timing of the advance of the applicant will comply with the Department of Treasury advance for the financial regulations 31 CFR Part 205. Statement of whether the application prefers to receive the disbursement of federal funds of advance payment to reimbursement. 9. Opinion of the application legal counsel showing the counsel is unfamiliar with the corporate with the other organization power of the application authorized to make the application is eligible to participate in rail service assistance program in accordance with the provision by the Act of this part of the application has the request of the authority to carry out the action proposed in the application to assume the responsibility of the obligation created thereby. 10. The assurance of this application will comply with the program with the conduct of the accordance with the following federal laws and policy regulations pertaining to the directive of Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title 42, U.S. Standard Code 2000D, attend sequence in Title 49 CFR Part 21, Section 905 of the Railroad Revitalization Regulatory Reform Act of 1976, the 45 U.S. Standard Code 803 and Title 49 CFR Part 265 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the Title 29 U.S. Standard Code 794, Title 49 CFR 227, and Title 44, the Federal Register 31442, May 31st, 1979, related to non-discrimination on the basis of the handicapped and the state of the local fiscal area, Assistant Acts of 1972, Title 31, U.S. Standard Code 1221, 10 Sequence 31, Code of Related Relation, Part 51, when two more states Desire to combine the entitlement for the portion of the purpose of the funding of the project certification for the governor delegates of each of the state involved with the part of the interstate agreement that are required under Section 5H4 of the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654H4 for the certification shall include the amount of money to be used for the state and entitlement of the state and turn into the grant project. Additional contents. In addition, with the meeting with the requirements of the paragraph BC of the section, each of the application except for the planning with the assistant with the request of it shall include the evidence of the agency submitting with the application of the statutory authority for the administrative jurisdiction to develop and promote, supervise, for the support, safety, adequate, efficient rail services that employ and will be employed and directly and indirectly sufficient and trained with the qualified personnel that will maintain adequate programs, investigation, research, probation, development of the provision, public participation that is designated directly solely for the corporation and other state, the agency to take practical steps that improve the transportation safety, reduce the transportation related to the energy utilization pollution. Planning assistance. Additional meeting of the requirements of the paragraph B and C for the section. Each of the application planning, the assistance include the planning of the work program together with such information for the state will ensure the submit to demonstrate the satisfaction administrator that the state proposed for the planning assistance for the produce the state rail plan and update the amendment the revisions need the requirements of 266-15. This part of the planning work program shall include the following information. A1. The explanation for how the rail plan will be related overall the planning process for the transportation with the state. The explanation shall concentrate on the expectation of the state, future local railway service with the consider of the facility, likelihood, profitability, existing railway lines, necessity of the railway service, continuation, payment of the state acquisition railway plans, use for the alternative mode of the transportation in lieu of the railway freight service, the other long-term alternatives, a description of the methods with the state involved with the local, regional bodies, and public general of the rail planning of the progress, including the method of the providing an adequate distribution resource. 3. The identification of the data obtained by the rail network, the rail service, the state, the source of the data, the method of the employee, and the collection of the data, the description of the method of the state will develop in the state of the rail plan, including the brief description on the script task of the activity of the accomplished. 5. The list of the individual responsible for the planning of the work schedule and the budget. F. The rail service continuation assistance additional meeting the requirements of the paragraph B, C, and D, and E, F of the section of the application for the rail service continuation assistance shall include the following amount of the estimated rail service continuation payment for each of the line. 2. The description of the arrangement with the applicant has made up operation for the rail service subsidized, including the copy of the proposed observation agreement, the leases and other compensation agreements with the service provided with the result of the application for the pre-awarded proposed operative with equipment leasing a company in which the equipment is being used to provide with the rail services is to be leased by a proposed operator. The acquisition service, in addition with the meeting requirements of the paragraphs B, C, and D for the section application and acquisition assistance shall include the following: the copy of the result of the title search of the base for the proposed acquisition price, including the 2 independent valuation, appraisal for the qualification, and appraisal for the such appraisal should be performed in accordance with the uniform appraisal standard for the federal land acquisition proposed with the lender agency land acquisition conference shall be based on the result of the title search comparable to the sale of the shall take with the conveniency of the easement and the encumbrance for the restriction that may affect the value of the property. Appraisal shall be reviewed with the state review appraiser to establish just and compensation. Written assurance for the acquisition is being undertaken in accordance with the section, accordance with the Title 49 CFR 25-253, 25-255, 25-257, 25-259. There is extent practical to state law fully with the compliance of Title 49 CFR 25-261A and 25-263. Written assurance for the owner of the property acquired that has been advised with the requirement of Title 49 CFR 25-259 with advised the requirement prior to the consumption with the acquisition description, the necessary step at the time of the completion of the acquisition. When the rail service is implemented and immediately provided with online with a description of the arrangements with the application made for the operation of the rail service, including the copy of the proposed operating of the arrangements, releases the compensation agreement of which the service is provided, description of the means of the state with the continue with the rail service, the property of the required with one system for the act of the terminated for applications requiring the rail for the banking and evidence for the property for the assistant with the request for the potential for the rail freight service with the plan. The agricultural development, existing fossil fuels reserve, then state anticipated timetable of the returning of the line, the service, and its proposed the property while it's out. The service, including the maintenance of the plan of the evidence for the anticipated the benefits cost of the proposed acquisition, have been analyzed in accordance with the methodology with the estimate established by the statute of 266 15C5 of the part of the rehabilitation improvement system with the rail certificate rail facility construction assistance. In addition, with the meeting of the requirements of paragraph B, C, and D, each applicant rehabilitation improvement assistance rail facility construction as assistance shall include the following: a detailed estimate of the material labor required for the complete of the work, with the total estimated cost of the work, with the estimated number of the guns of the ties, with other materials in the milepost terminal involved with the schedule and completion of the work, the evidence for the anticipated benefit, the cost of the proposed acquisition, but that may be analyzed with the coordinates for the methodology established for the state under 26615C5 of this part. 3. When the rehabilitation assistance is requested, a copy of the documentation funds for the grant of the loan and to the interest of the rate was determined by the state of the owner of the rail property, the operator of the rail service related to the project. Being assured for the chief of the executive office, the application of that repaid for the loan funds, the interest they accumulated with respect to such funds will not be loaned of the grant under without prior written approval of the administrator of the federal share of the repaid loans of the fund placed the interest bearing on the account with the prior written approval of the administrator will be deposited for the borrower or for the benefit of the use of the state of the bank of the which for the designated with the Secretary of the Treasury in accordance with the Title 12 of the U.S. Standard Code 265. 3. If the rehabilitated improvement of the facilities are not used as rail freight with the service during the useful life of the improvement of the federal share of the fare of the market, the value of improvement or facility will be placed in interest bearing an account without the prior written approval of the administrator will deposit for the owner of the rail property for the benefit of the use of the state in a bank that has been designated with the Secretary of the Treasury in accordance with the Title 12 of the U.S. Standard Code 265. Assuring the chief executive officers applicant with the rehabilitation improvement of the facility and newly constructed the facility to maintain to prevent the deterioration below which for the lines could be operated with the completion of the project during the period of time the top of the payback period for the benefit cost of the analysis project. In addition, with the meeting of the requirements of paragraph B, C, and D, and H1 with the section each of the application provided project eligible under section 266 7B21 commissions that may be finding with the grants application for the abandonment of the discontinuance of 2 and 3 or 4 with the shall include the following. 1. Identification of which of the following methods will be used with the complete with the work and include with the proposed contracts unless the work is performed with the method A, with the actual cost of the basis of the operator for the application. B. Contracting of the work according to the attachment of the office management circular A102. C. Under the existing continuing contract between the operator with another firm with the provider with the applicant committee to demonstrate the cost is comparable to those in the paragraph H2, 1A or B of the section 3. 2. The description of plans and inspection working, including identification, qualification of the staff, reasonable inspection, proposed schedule for the inspection, and 3. A description arrangement of the made for the operation of the rail service of the property, including the copy of the proposed the operating agreement, the leases or other compensation agreements under the services to provide the proposed method of financing the operation of such rail services. 3. In addition, with the meeting with the requirements of the paragraph B, C, D, and H1 for the section application for the project eligibility under section 266.7B1 and 2I1, the commission has not been made with the finding of the grant application for the amendment with discontinuance shall include the assurance of the common care of the operator of the service on or owns the line related to the project of the application for the certificate of abandonment. The discontinuance have been filed with the commission with the application with withdrawn with a reasonable period following the execution of the grant agreement before the federal funds are disbursed in the project. When the rail facility construction assistance request for the insurance of the chief executive officer application for the facility abandonment is sold with the converted with the non-rail freight during the usual life. The FRA will be compensated amount of the computed by and applying with the FRA participation for the cost of the construction facility, the fair market value of the facility, and to the time of the abandonment is sold and converted to non-rail use. I. Substituted services assistance. The additional meeting of the requirements of paragraph B, C, and D with the section each application substitute services and shall include 1. Detailed description of the substitute of the services of the project within and evidence of the cost of the scope of the project and limited the necessary for the replace the rail services before being discontinued. 2. Evidence anticipated benefits of the cost of the proposed acquisition have been analyzed by the accordance with the methodology establishing with the state under statute 266.15C5 of this part. For the construction improvement of fixed facilities, description of the proposed work included 1. The cost of the time of the working, and 2. The assurance of the chief of the executive officer applicant of the federal share of the project will be repaid with accordance with the attachment and with the office management budget A102 of the property whether or not used for the rail freight service. During the useful life of the project property, the relocation of the cost following assurance of the chief of the executive officer of the applicant with the rail line related to the project eligible under section 5K4A with the applicant 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654K4A. The assurance of the applicant the request is only if the assistance is needed to relocate the shippers with receiving the rail service of the line time commission with the file of the public convenience necessary for the award permanent discontinuance to abandon the rail service. 2. With the rail line related to the project eligibility under section 5K4B with the Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1654K4B with the assurance that the assistance is being requested to relocate only the shippers who receive the rail service on the line as of April 1st, 1976. Alright, 3. An assurance for the base, but thereafter if the shipper does not be relocated for the line with respect to the application, the certificate and the abandonment discontinuance has been filed with the commission for the applicant to be filed with the withdrawal with a reliable, reasonable period of the following execution for the grant agreement. The federal funds are dispersed in the project. Assurance the Chief Executive Officer application after the completion of the substitute service for the position on additional federal assistance for the non-request for the continuation of the rail freight service of the substitute service designated with the replace for the unless administrative determined the circumstances that have been changed for the continual rail freight service is more cost effective than the continued use of the substitute and made service project. 6. A description of the arrangement made of the operation service of the rail service provided with the conjunction of the substitute service included the copy of the proposed operating arrangement agreement to lease of the other compensation agreement design with which the service is provided. Assurance that the Chief Executive Officer application the assistance provided will not be used to pay non-federal share of any under the federal program. Execution filing application. Each of the original application shall bear the date of the execution signed by the Chief Executive Officer or agency for submitting the application. 2. Each applicant planning of the assistance for the 2 copies thereof shall be filed with the administrator through the appropriate Federal Highway Administration Division office. Each application, including the request for the planning assistance, the 2 copies thereof to fill with the administrative through the appropriate regional director of the federal assistant currently for the appropriate mailing address for the approved above the official to provide with the FRA to each state. 266.19 Environmental impact. Generally, the administrative determined to provide the assistance to be found with the cost of not of major action significantly affecting the quality of the human environment or rehabilitation or improvement, specifically the work normally performed with a periodic basis but it does not change with the existing character of the facility, including work to overcome the normal periodic maintenance that has been deferred for the rail service continuation acquisition planning. B. Substitute service assistance, the rail facility construction assistance are not exempt the rehabilitation improvement assistance for the environmental assessment. When the application requests the substitute service assistance, the rail facility construction assistance, the rehabilitation improvement assistance expect for the rehabilitation improvement assistance will exempt for the end of the paragraph A of the section. The application shall prepare the environmental assessment to determine whether the future of their property will significantly affect the quality of the human environment. B. Provide sufficient documentation to enable the administrator to determine the project is satisfied with the following criteria. 1. The action is not likely to be environmental controversially from the point of view of the people living within. The environment effect of the action is controversial with respect to the availability of the adequate relocation of housing. The action is not inconsistent with the federal, state, local law, with the regulation, ordinance, judicial, administrative determination related to environmental protection. The action will not have a significantly adverse impact of the natural, cultural, recreational, scenic environment in which the action takes place for the air with the water quality and the noise level in such environment. The action will not use the 4F protected property adversely affect the properties under Section 106 of the National Historical Preservation Act in value, new construction located within the wetlands and in effect of the base of the Florida flood plan. The action will not cover the significantly short, long-term increase of traffic congestion, other significant adverse environmental impact of any of the mode of transportation. The action is not an integral part of the program action for the land and not considerable separately would not be classified in major FRA actions, but considerable together would be classified. 7. Environmental asset documentation not required for the federal law of the regulation guideline order of the judicial administrative determination other than the part 2. Prior to submitting the application, the FRA recommends the application seek the administrative advice as form of the substance assessment with the project under the consideration environmental assessment that utilize the interdisciplinary approach to identifying the type of the degree of effects, probability, occurrence, and primary, secondary, cumulative, the potential environmental impact of the positive and negative of the proposed action and alternative course of the action with the depth of coverage shall be consistent with the magnitude of the project expected for the environmental effects of the environmental assessment. All documents used for the basis of the assessment shall be substituted together with the application assistance to the environmental impact statement. The draft environmental impact statement shall be substituted with each of the application. The environmental assessment includes the feature of use for the significantly affect the quality of the human environment. The FAA recommends the prior submitting the application of this application seeks the administrative advice to form the substance of the environmental impact statement of the project under the consideration. Finding no significant impact with the draft and finding with the non-significant impact declaration shall be submitted with each of the application environmental assessment concludes the figure used does not signify the effect of the quality of the human environment. Finding no significant impact shall include the direct description of the project with the insufficient data of the environmental finding to support the conclusion of the impact upon the quality of the human environment. The FRA recommends the prior submitting of the application from the application seek the administrative advice to see the form substance for the finding of the project under the circumstances. Section 4F, determination for the projects involving the use of the land with the public park, recreation area, wildlife, waterfowl, the refuge of the historical site of the national, state, or local to significantly determine the federal, state, local, and law officials have the jurisdiction thereon, the information for the support of the determination pursuant to Section 4F of the Act shall be submitted together with the application. Section 4F, the determination for the shall document. There is no feasible, prudent, alternative deed for the such land. The project can include the planning of to minimize harm resulting for the subject use, such use. 5. The historical preservation project involving the use of the historical, cultural, agricultural resource, the ability with the eligible listing with the National Register, historical place and information documentation for the Advisory Council for the Historical Preservation has been afforded the opportunity to review and comment with the proposed project. According to the Title of 16 U.S. Standard Code 470 and 36 Title CFR Part 800 shall be submitted with the application. Highway-related facilities substitute with the surface of the project involving the highway-related facilities are subject to applicable substance of the highway administrative regulations, environmental consideration, Title 23 CFR Part 771. 266-21 grant agreement of disbursement. The grant agreement one upon the approval of the application meeting with the requirement of statute 266-17 the part of the grant agreement with the federal share with the approved amount of the estimated program cost the execute with the administrator of the grantor the grant arrangement with the identify the amount of the grantor's share of the program cost of the furnishment the cost of the approval of the kind benefit of the grantor shall expand with the prorated with the share with the contribution with the same time payment the federal share of the mayor made available to the grantor. Disbursement of the federal funds provided with the either advance letter or the other with the credit with the treasury check with the reimbursement in accordance with the attachment J of the Office of Management Budget A102. Part of the advancement of the payment of the grantor must be that to demonstrate with the satisfaction of the administrator that establish the procedure for the comply with the Office of Management Budget A102 attachment J, including the procedure for the minimum of the time and elapsing between the receipt of the fund and the grantor of the disbursement. Evidence of compliance shall provide with the administrator at least 30 days prior to the anticipated date receipt of the advance payments and the advance for the letter of the credit issued with the rail service assistance expected to provide minimum of the 1 year expected to involve the annual payment of the aggregation of at least $120,000. Otherwise, advance payments are made with the treasury check of the grantor. Is not eligible to advance payment that does not desire with them. The grantor will reimburse for the eligible expenditures at the end of the each fiscal quarter upon submission of the request for the reimbursement before the submission more than the federal funds may be to the grantor, but the payment of the third party for the end of the subjection grantor must have the executed agreement within the third party. Acquisition assistant with the disbursement only after the following have been approved the administrator the title of the opinion with the chief legal official of the grantor describe the title of the being acquired if the general warranty deed is not being given and it must explain why it could not be given and the opinion shall advise any of the need for the use of state admission dominion power to assure adequate and title. The addition of the opinion shall be explained how the defects and disclose the title search might affect the market ability of the property. 2. Written determination that the property acquired with limited land with the facilities or need of the rail freight services which would have been curtailed abandoned with it before the acquisition and accepted the administrator of the written determination for the purchase of the prior to the price of the consistent with the value of the property interest or as being acquired with the evidence upon which the determination is based. C. Settlement. Settlement of the grant agreement is based on made on the basis of the federal audit, which is determined by the allowable cost over the entire time of the grant agreement. If the federal audit determines for the allowable cost of the grant agreement or less than the amount of the grant, the difference shall be refunded with the FRA at the end of the fiscal year with the audit which was made unless to become subject to another executed grant agreement. The determination for the state participation with the rail service assistance program in the state shall repay the FRA federal shares of any other youth rehabilitation improvement assistance and any accumulated interest. Statute 266-23 record audit examination retention the custodial requirements of financial required record supporting documents statistical records all of the records pertaining with the grantor provided with the department shall be provided with the attachment C with the Office Management Budget Circular 102. Alright, the Administrator, Comptroller General of the United States, any other duly authorized general representative shall, until the expiration of the 3-year submission for the Administrator of the grantor, final accounting the all program funds for the any longer with the period necessary to resolve the audit findings that have success for the purpose of the audit with examination of the books, documents, paper, the records, with the open menu with the Administrator of the Comptroller of the General of the United States may be related to pertaining to the grants, contracts, or other agreements arising out of or in a way with connected to the Rail Service Assistant Program. Alright, 266-25, waiver of the modification. Administrator of the Navy will respect the individual costs upon the good cover to show them the waive to modify any request from the department required by the law with the make an additional requirement the administrator becomes necessary to procedural submission consideration and petitions for waiver of modification governed in Title 49 CFR Part 211. And that completes your 266 Assistant States Local Rail Services under Section 5 of the Department of Transportation Act.